Hey, hello everyone. I'm Monica Berger, and my talk is entitled Addressing Epistemic Injustice Through the Lens of Bibliodiversity and Diamond Open Access. So here's what I'll cover in my talk. I'll give you some background about me and the evolution of my thought process. I'll talk about CritLib and ScalCom and where they do and don't intersect, neoliberalism, the unbalanced landscape of scholarly outputs and the hegemony of the English language, bibliodiversity, and some related declarations to know, epistemological injustice and colonialism, open access, voices from the South, and lastly, wrap up with what we can do. Okay, so how did I get here? A faculty librarian at the City University of New York, and I work at a poorly resourced, large undergraduate public institution that serves students from low-income backgrounds. As a faculty librarian, I've had to develop a research agenda, and I started by exploring the topic of predatory publishing. As a result of that work, I became more aware of how scholarly communications privileges the privileged. I believe that Diamond Open Access, particularly scholar-led and library publishing, is of critical importance globally and helps to mitigate predatory publishing. As you are aware, predatory publishing has been quite damaging to scholars and publishers from the South. So, I noticed a curious thing. Predatory publishing was unusual in Latin America. Oops, my slides are advancing on their own, maybe from vibrations. So predatory publishing was unusual in Latin America. I subsequently learned that Latin America is an exemplar of community-based open access resisting business as usual. Next, I wrote Bibliodiversity at the Center for Development and Change's special issue on open access and the South. Little did I know that the experience of authoring this article would change me. The editors made me aware that I have presumptions about quality and what constitutes good publishing because of my positionality as an academic librarian from the North. Lastly, a couple of years ago, I was invited to participate in a conference that considered epistemic injustice, and I began to draw connections between scholarly communications, or ScalCom, epistemology, and post-colonial theory. So I'd like to share a provocation. Have we thought critically about how we can push back against business as usual when it comes to scholarly communications, particularly as it affects the global South? And if we engage in this challenge, can we do so without imposing Northern values on Southern stakeholders? So, what does CritLib have to say about scholarly communications, and does CritLib adequately consider the global South? If not, at what expense? Do discourses on EDI or DEI that are so integral to CritLib distract from a fuller understanding of how existing systems marginalize Southern knowledge? I found only 3 articles in the Library and Information Science, or LIS, literature about the intersection of critical librarianship and scholarly communications, including one article by April Hathcock. Not much. And what about the South? It is my observation that in the US and Canada, LIS conversations focus on racism and to a much lesser degree Indigenous knowledge, but do not commonly consider the global South. I've also observed how the term decolonization in LIS, particularly American LIS, with some exceptions, is often disconnected from concerns about the South. Northern librarians from the UK and Europe may be more sensitive to the South, perhaps because of the legacy of colonialism as well as Europe's language diversity. I recently became aware of the book Narrative Expansions: Interpreting Decolonization in Academic Libraries. The book's authors have an international conceptualization of decolonization that considers the South. Scholarly communications and open access are discussed in many chapters. This book is, in my mind, the counterpart to MIT Press's Knowledge Justice, which highlights critical race theory and does not consider the South. Although most of Knowledge Justice is about traditional library functions like collections, Harrison Inafuku's chapter draws connections between anti-racism work and library publishing. Knowledge justice is typically American in its inward focus. Librarians often connect these debates to collections, but not to scholarly communications or the South. So, who has looked outwards? Rowe and Gabler consider the Global South, and Hathcock has written further about Eurocentrism in scholarly communications. Yan et al.'s article examines how the LIS landscape reproduces epistemic injustice, and David Hudson writes about how LIS others from the South, specifically Africa. So, neoliberalism, it is the invisible thread. It is the monetization and quantification of all things. It is an important theme in CritLib, and we must consider its role in scholarly communications. How does neoliberalism affect all scholars? The consolidation of the scholarly publishing industry into the Big Four is monopolistic and has resulted in many mid-sized and smaller publishers losing their autonomy. Corporate scholarly publishing exploits open access by author fees, or APCs. Leslie Chan introduced me to the concept of platform capitalism, also known as surveillance capitalism, as it applies to scholarly communications, where author data is captured from end to end, from literature review to publishing venues, and finally via bibliometric indexes and rankings. Bibliometric products produced by two mega corporations are sold back to universities. I will talk more about how bibliometrics oppress scholars from the South later. Neoliberalism encourages scarcity conditions for most and even greater gains for the elite, resulting in increased publisher perish. And the focus on bibliometrics also results in a constant ramping upwards of competition. The South continues to experience information poverty. Many scholars have significant teaching loads and lack funding for research infrastructure, conference travel, and so on. So, here's the unbalanced world that I reference in my talk's title. This map is a little dated, but powerful evidence of the unbalance of scholarly outputs. A classic and highly recommended book by Nagaraja, A Geopolitics of Academic Writing, uses the word periphery to describe the South. He discusses how Southern knowledge is gate-kept by the North, creating a hegemony of knowledge. Southern knowledge is raw product to be extracted, and the trope of extraction is important in the discourse on Southern epistemic injustice. So, this is from a preprint of a new study that shows us how English persists as the dominant, if not de facto, language of scholarly publishing, with just what I would describe as a tiny degree of change occurring. For a great overview on English as a lingua franca, a piece by Curry and Lillis summarizes their research on English language dominance in journal publishing. So, looking at bibliometrics is a shortcut to understanding how scholarly communications exclude Southern voices. For example, the top 50 journals in Scopus are all English language. Journal Citation Reports, or JCR, the source for the journal impact factor, comes in different versions, including Emerging Sources Citation Index, ESCI. Non-English journals are either excluded from JCR or shunted off to ESCI. And Clarivate recently assigned journal impact factors to some periodicals in ESCI They proudly announced that 5% more journals in the South will now be measured. Whoa, whoa. Concerns about ESCI are not new, and a recent study concluded that Clarivate's impact factor threatens bibliodiversity and perpetuates the marginal position of the South. David Mills and colleagues argue that Africa should have its own citation index, and he uses the term bibliometric coloniality. A Ghanaian scholar stated that, quote, her ideal was to publish not just in locally based journals, but locally based journals that are referenced internationally, end quote. Really great quote. It's showing attention, supporting local knowledge and location of journals, but also wanting to be read and cited internationally. Let us not forget that the narrative of predatory journals also comes into play, as local African journals are often perceived as illegitimate. So, Kana et al. Quantified journal creation by language and country, and below is their map that updates the map I referenced a little earlier. And they call for more rather than less publishing, especially for the Global South specifically, because it promulgates decolonization and bibliodiversity. And this article is fantastic. Okay. Bibliodiversity, or bibliodiversidad, is traced to a group of publishers in Chile in the late 1990s, noting that, quote, bibliodiversity is a complex, self-sustaining system, end quote. This stands in contrast to Northern corporate scholarly publishing monoculture. One size does not fit all. Bibliodiversity is expressed through diverse languages, local knowledge, and better metrics. More importantly, bibliodiversity is self-determined, community-focused, and community-based. These are feminist values, and they are anti-colonial. In Latin America, various stakeholders, including librarians, have long participated in scholarly publishing collectives. So these declarations resist the tyranny of scholarly bibliometrics, historically expanding to consider bibliodiversity, progressing from DORA, the San Francisco Declaration, to Leiden, which addresses bibliodiversity, to the JUSU call, and other subsequent declarations. Next, let's briefly address how epistemology addresses our concerns. Epistemology probes, quote, what does it mean to know something, and by what means are we able to have knowledge? The subfields of epistemic injustice and coloniality apply to today's talk. Brenda Fricker, the key philosopher on epistemic injustice, was heavily informed by feminism and writes about how testimonial injustice delegitimizes the speaker as having insufficient credibility, or conversely favors the speaker with unwarranted credibility. Testimonial injustice has profoundly informed the North-South scholarly divide. Fricker describes hermeneutical injustice as twofold: a silencing or erasure and a misapprehension. Fricker does not believe that anyone is to blame for these structural problems. Although this is often the case, we need to reconsider these injustices in terms of responsibility, whether societal/institutional or individual. Complicity in systems that perpetuate epistemic injustice and control of resources for creating knowledge undergird scholarly epistemic injustice. Next, epistemic injustices, sibling epistemic coloniality. Many of us are familiar with the notion of the colonial as persisting long after independence. Colonialism lingers in structures and mindsets, including those of the South. A recent article published by Latin American ornithologists on the systemic exclusion of scholars from the South demonstrates epistemic coloniality in practice. Although 1/3 of the world's bird species are based in Latin America, they've not been adequately studied. The research almost exclusively comes from the North. Latin American scientists' research is missing. The authors of this article discuss the repression of indigenous knowledge in ornithology and provide a Spanish language abstract as well as a summary for lay readers. Policy copying is a manifestation of epistemic coloniality. Southern universities embrace Northern university rankings and bibliometrics. Southern scholars are pressured to avoid local research, and they are also pressured to publish in English. Epistemic coloniality is also expressed by how few Southern scholars peer review. Only 4% of journal editors are based in the South. It's ironic how open access itself has become an impediment to Southern knowledge creation. Leslie Chan said it so well. Openness, when decontextualized from its historical and political roots, could become as exploitive and oppressive as the legacy system it seeks to displace. So, let's examine open access. Peter Suber wrote, the basic idea of OA or open access is simple, make research literature available online without price barriers and without most permission barriers. Available emphasizes access for reading. I concur with others that the founders of open access focused on the Global South as readers and not knowledge producers. Penfield, Knochelmann, Ulrich, Hayter, and others critique open access. Lai Ma critiques openness and highlights how openness can be exploited by commercial interests, exacerbating epistemic injustice. Plan S turned out to be more problematic than not, as it accelerated open access by APC, frustrating many from the South where authors frequently pay out of pocket for APCs. Let's also note that APCs continue to increase at hyperinflationary rates. Diamond open access, immediate and without author fees, is a key solution. There are many who critique open access, advocating for the South in theory and praxis, including Herb Ulrich, Chan, Reggie Raju, Ariana Baracil Garcia, Paula Clemente Vega, Sam Moore Martineve, and others. We as librarians want to engage in communities and discourses outside of our own countries and should look to IFLA, UNESCO, the work of CORE, the Confederation of Open Access Repositories, and other organizations, including the Latin American collectives, as well as the important work of Northern organizations, including, and in particular, DIAMAS, developing institutional open access publishing models to advance scholarly communication, OPERAS, open scholarly communication in the European research area for social sciences and humanities, and ERODI, that support diamond open access and multilingualism. Examples of South-to-South efforts include the replication of African Journals Online, or HAOL, platform elsewhere in the South, for example, Nepal, and South Africa's creation of its own version of Brazil's Cielo, Scientific Electronic Library Online. A global summit on diamond open access is at the vanguard of mutual assistance. It has been held twice in Mexico and South Africa, respectively, bringing together publishers, editors, infrastructure technologists, and librarians to address growing diamond open access for everyone. Working collectively and collaboratively makes a critical difference. Now, for example, or in contrast, university presses in Nigeria are struggling because they function as isolated for-profit operations. Library publishing offers a solution. Before I move ahead and talk about this, about the African platform, we need to remember that South can have a different conception of journal publishing, emphasizing in-kind support rather than publishing expertise. And a survey of diamond open access in Africa found most journal publishing operations were small and staffed by volunteers, and few had permanent funding. With concerns about sustainability as well as reach, most journals were really eager to collaborate. Reggie Raju and Jill Clausen at the University of Cape Town have long been international leaders in open access, and they created library publishing for books and journals in their library, but with paid staffing and long-term. And their work was so successful that they went on to launch the Continental Platform, which is now rebranded as the African Platform for Open Scholarship. And this provides not only hosting, but also training for sustainable publishing for universities throughout Africa. As I alluded to earlier, Latin America was and is at the vanguard of bibliodiversity in practice. Various collectives are not just for publishing, but also for indexing and discovery. My article, Bibliodiversity at the Center, gives detailed descriptions of these programs and gives their full names: Cielo, Claxo, Redalic, Amanlica, La Referencia. And I emphasized bibliometrics a lot in this talk, and I wanted to share that indicators from Claxo Redalic provide a variety of data expressing the full information lifecycle, including reader information by geography and type, how research is applied, and most interestingly, how scholars collaborate. These are more humane metrics and radically different from, the mainstream. So to conclude, what can we do? Here's what we can do. Let's push against bibliometrics that oppress. Read Dora, share it with your authors and administrators, encourage use of selective and narrative CVs, and promotion of socially engaged scholarship. Teach and talk about how reward systems have become factory-like and unsustainable, resulting in unreproducible science and not good things like excess, special issues, paper mills, and predatory publishing. Support Diamond Open Access because sustainability is its top concern. Librarians can help by both supporting colleagues at their campuses who are journal editors, as well as getting involved with library publishing. We're the best when it comes to questions about discoverability, preservation, and other best practices. Library publishing is especially helpful for monographs in the humanities and social sciences that traditional publishers may not find marketable, and it aligns with UN Sustainable Development Goals. The good news is that the 2025 version of the Budapest Open Access Initiative, Plan S, and the EU all address the knowledge production glitch, or as Chan said, gap, and how open access has become oppressive. So smash the machine or kick it. Resisting research assessment as we know it and corporate hegemony in scholarly publishing are good places to start. And please read Dave Gamondi's radical take on how library publishing can save us through mutual assistance, and think about how we can reclaim open access as the commons. Reject big deals with the big four scholarly publishers and divert money and people to scholar-led or library publishing or related initiatives, and communicate why corporate publishing is bad. Do this craftily without angering your administrators and authors. Bibliodiversity. Educate your users about the importance of varied outputs and readerships, including plain language summaries. Support applied knowledge and other research that helps people. Reflect on your values and encourage others to do so as well. Educopia's Forest Framework is a values-driven innovation based in library publishing, and it centers the community, highlighting what we've learned from bibliodiversity. Cooperation is another key component of bibliodiversity, and we should support organizations discussed today and others, including SPARC, Force 11, the Library Publishing Coalition, the Directory of Open Access Journals, the Public Knowledge Project, and others who create mutual assistance or provide infrastructure without compromising self-governance. Most importantly, whether through our scholarship or through our work, we want to respectfully listen to the South and support their efforts to define and determine their own knowledge creation and dissemination. And that's it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Monica. That was really interesting. I have a question about yesterday we had someone presenting on open monographs and a project on open monographs at British University. And I was just wondering how you think open monographs might fit in to bibliodiversity and fit into what you have been talking about.
Oh, very much so. I mean, I know certainly in the US, and I don't know much about the UK, university presses are really struggling. So monographic publishing is just so important. And um, it allows, when you are doing things outside of the mainstream, you have room to experiment as well. You could have social annotation. You could, um, do all kinds of more experimental things with the text. And also, of course, um, it just opens up more opportunities for readership and so on. So does that answer the question?
Yeah, thank you. I think it was really interesting as well. You made that point about I think it was African publishers and being sort of volunteer led and
Yes.
the difficult that makes it. And I think we probably see kind of a similar situation in the UK of universities not necessarily wanting to support their presses unless they immediately make money. So,
Oh, that's so interesting. No, I mean, sometimes it's just a matter of a reallocation of budgets. But yeah, it's kind of a country by country thing, like, what kind of infrastructure is there? And I know in the UK there's a lot of emphasis on green open access, correct?
yes, yeah.
So yeah, no, it's really interesting. And, one of my big concerns too are, if you're not at a research intensive, well-funded institution, can you do that library publishing or scholar-led publishing with any kind of level of quality? So that's where, I think people getting together and sharing infrastructure and expertise is so important.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. We've had a bit of discussion in the chat about someone was asking if it's best for all research to be published in the researcher's native language or languages, and if there's a place for translation in bibliodiversity and publishing.
Oh, yes. There is. I think, though, it's proven to be a very knotty problem over the years. And um, I think part of the problem, too, is can the editors afford to pay for proper translation, right? Or can the author publish bilingually? I mean, that's not totally unknown, but I think it's just a huge expense. And I mean, wouldn't it be great to have more bilingual publishing?
Yeah. Yeah, we've got someone with their hand up. Nancy, would you like to ask your question?
Hello, I'm working with a library in Africa, and one of the things that they asked about was access to journals, and wanted me to be able to give them access to journals. So I'm very pleased to hear about this African initiative that is entirely Africa-based in terms of giving those accesses to journals. Um, how do
Nancy, may I ask a question though? Are you referring to uh, access as readers or as publishers?
As readers, this is
No.
specifically about what their students can access in terms of for their research purposes and for because the library itself has a lot of resources. It's a francophone country. The library has a lot of resources that are European in origin and don't have a lot of resources or any resources that come from the global south. What I'm wondering, and I don't know, this is this is a bit of a delicate question.
Yes.
How trustworthy are the journals that they've put up on this platform?
Which platform are we talking about specifically?
The journal, oh my goodness, the African Platform for Open Scholarship.
Oh, um, Oh my God. No, I would not be concerned about that or HAOL. They are so sensitive to these questions about quality that HAOL actually developed with another stakeholder, my memory is not great, a standards and a rating system for journals. I mean, no, no, I would not be concerned about it. And then there's an organization, it's based, I guess, in Sweden, INASP, and they developed all these different journal programs to help low income, lower income countries have access to journals. So that is another thing to be aware of. I did not discuss it because it's not about publishing, it's about access. So if you want to email me offline, I can give you all that information.
That would be brilliant because I'm infected by their concerns about having access to good quality resources. And so before I go to them with, here is another resource, I want to be able to assure them
Yeah.
that what they're getting is indeed going to be of a good standard.
Yeah, I mean, an erudite and operas are both, francophone, multilingual but francophone based journal operations. Well, I mean, they're not publishers, but they're support. Erudite, I guess, is a publisher, and I think operas is just trying to support. That's Pierre Munir, support multilingualism.
Okay, I'm going to have to jump in here because time is up, but thank you so much, Monica. If you have time to have a look at the chat, people have responded really well to your talk and are saying lots of thank yous. So thank you so much. I'm just going to stop recording.